Okay, are vegetables poisonous? Are plants bad for us? Is meat, a superfood? Or is meat bad? That's the question. And so, what we are told is that a plant-based diet is going to be yielding a better outcome. That is based on population-based studies, which we've seen. It's interesting. We have a sort of a field of nutrition that was founded by Seventh-day Adventists back in 1917, starting with Leonard Cooper, who was one of the founding members of the American Dietetics Association. There's been a plant-based bias from the beginning. Remember, the American diet is 70% plants and about 30% animal products, of which only about 5% of that is actual red meat. So we eat very little red meat in this country, despite eating a relatively high amount relative to the rest of the world. But we still get the vast majority of our calories coming from plant foods. Now, granted, many of those foods are grains. Many of those foods are sugars, seed oils. We a significant percentage of our caloric intake comes from vegetable oils, and so. But those are still plant-based products. Now, we could argue that some are worse than others, and some people will say that fruits and vegetables and grains beans and legumes might be less damaging to us. But when we look at, and I'll link this in the description, there's a nice study that Bruce Ames did back in 1990 looking at toxicology of plant pesticides. And so the concern was that people were really worried about pesticides being sprayed on crops as a potential health problem. So we see that today with glyphosate. People are worried about Roundup on their food and getting it into the food chain, and so that's a valid concern. And so his study back in 1990 looked at the volume of pesticides that people are consuming, and in that study he figured out that despite spraying pesticides on plants, we still get 99.9% of our ingested pesticides are actually coming from the plants themselves. That is, plants are making pesticides to kill insects, to kill fungi, to dissuade mammals and other things from eating them. So these plants make their own pesticides. And people say, well, that's just a natural pesticide. That's no big deal. Just because a compound is natural does not mean it's innocuous. In other words, it doesn't mean it doesn't harm you. Cyanide is a naturally occurring plant pesticide. It's found in many plants. You can find it in apple seeds and almonds and other compounds. And we know that cyanide is a poison. And in fact, when they looked at, during that study back in 1990, when they looked at that study, they found that of the 52 compounds they tested, and 52 is only a tiny fraction, there are literally thousands of compounds found in all these plants that we normally consume. They found that of those 52 compounds, 27 of them were shown to be carcinogenic in animals. That is to say, rat studies and mice studies. And granted, some of those were in high dosage. But that is the same sort of stuff we hear about meat. Meat compounds, heterocyclic amines, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are concerning because in high-dose rat studies, they show a potential carcinogenic potential. But we discount that in plants for some reason. I'm not sure why the reason is. Why I kind of know why, because it's not profitable for major cereal manufacturers and other processed food companies, which heavily rely on plant agriculture, particularly grain agriculture, to say and to recognize that maybe lectins or goitrogens or gliadins, glutens and stuff like that are problematic. And again, when we generally look at plant toxicology on foods we eat, we test them for acute illnesses. There might be some studies looking at potential DNA damage, which might predispose people for cancer, but we don't know if this particular compound predisposes someone to diabetes, to hypertension, to joint pain, to depression, to autoimmune disease. Those things have never been tested, so we just don't know. And so while I would say that it is remarkable to see that there are literally thousands upon thousands of people now that have found that by removing plants from their diet, their chronic diseases go away. Therefore, it is reasonable to posit that some of these plant compounds are actually contributing to these diseases. I don't think that is a wild speculation to make. I think it's, to dismiss that outright now that we have literally tens of thousands. I mean, I just did a survey, I got 11,000 responses, and something like 95% of the people saw improved health by going on a mostly or fully carnivorous diet, which I think is very, very curious at the very least. And so it's not to say that we should fear all plants and all plants are evil and bad, but we should recognize that they are potentially harmful and they are something that we should objectively assess individually. Again, population-based studies are not a good idea for telling you personally what to eat. And so what I would challenge many people to do is, if you're on the fence, just do a meat-based diet for 90 days. Go ahead and see what happens. Just convince yourself. Maybe you can convince yourself that I'm full of it, and that's fine. I mean, I don't think anybody should be listening really to anyone else. I mean, it's just information that's out there, but you never know unless you test it. And so I think that is, what I want to get across today in this video. A day literally does not go by where I do not have some ex-vegan or plant-based person or vegetarian that tells me that one, eating in a plant-based way ruined their health, and going to a fully meat-based way or a mostly meat-based way has dramatically improved their health. I mean, that information alone should be compelling to many, and to many people it is. But I mean, it's as if the greater scientific community chooses to put their head in the sand and ignore that and say, "Oh, it's not interesting. We don't want to hear about that. That's just anecdotes." But we have tens of thousands of these now, and so it's not going to go away. It's going to continue to grow. And again, I want to thank the community for continuing to put the word out there, put yourselves out there. I know for some of you, it put yourselves up to, additional abuse. I mean, some people outright ridicule you. Some people are out actually nasty about it. But I think it's what it's going to take. It's going to take some brave people to stand up and do what's right, and get the answers out there. Because the answer, in my view, is not this plant-based future. The fact that they think we're going to save the environment is another topic for another day. But I would say the short answer on that is no, it's not going to do that. It's going to greatly enrich a few people that are trying to sell you that message, but it's not going to help human population. It's not going to save the planet. It's not going to prevent climate change. It's not going to do any of those things. So anyway, stay strong. Keep doing what you're doing. Get the word out. I've got a lot more stuff coming. This is going to get bigger. I've got more and more higher level interest in this stuff, and we're going to make a difference in the world, guys. You guys don't be self-defeatist. This processed food, big pharma, plant-based agenda is powerful and strong, but it is not something that we can't push back against and be victorious over. And so, but it's going to take us putting in the time and the work. All right, guys, thank you. Like, subscribe, make comments. Vegans, I look forward to your silliness. And I look forward to the vegans, and it's nice that I have vegans on the channel because a significant percentage of the vegans that watch my channel end up leaving veganism. I mean, it happens anyway. I mean, as we already know, something like 85% of vegans end up being quitting, and there's like 5 times as many ex-vegans as there are current vegans, and vegans will only ever make up a tiny percentage of the population. The problem they are doing is they're advancing this plant-based agenda, and they're fooling otherwise, omnivorous people into thinking that they just need to cut back on their meat consumption, which is, that is something that's going to end up harming them because they're going to replace it with processed garbage. Okay, guys? All right, we'll talk to you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.